The Brexit Secretary, speaking alongside the European Commission's chief negotiator, announced the securities being put in place for the UK's fishermen during the transition period. Mr Davis also declared British waters will become sovereign, allowing the UK to negotiate access as an independent coastal state. After 2020, he said, "We've agreed specific safeguards when it comes to annual fishing negotiations. These arrangements will only apply for the negotiations in 2019 since we will still be a member state. Through 2020, we'll be negotiating fishing as an independent coastal state, deciding who can access our waters and on what terms." Reuters. GETTYBrexit News. David Davis announced fresh UK fishing controls for after 2020. For the year where it is relevant, we will agree the European Union will have to consult with us ahead of negotiations, and the United Kingdom's share of total catch won't be changed, protecting the interests of the United Kingdom's fishing community. UK fishermen had expressed concern that the government was ready to hand over access to Britain's waters in exchange for other concessions from the EU. Mr Davis's comments, however, didn't please all fishermen, with the Scottish Fishermen's Federation branding them far short of an acceptable deal. Reacting to the fisheries agreement, the SFF's chief executive Bertie Armstrong said, "This falls far short of an acceptable deal. We will leave the EU and leave the CFP, but hand back sovereignty over our seas a few seconds later. Our fishing community's fortunes will still be subject to the women largesse of the EU for another 2 years. Put simply, we do not trust them to look after us. So we issue this warning to the EU. Be careful what you do, with the consequences later will be severe." To our politicians, we say this. Some have tried to secure a better deal, but our governments have let us down. As a consequence, we expect a written, cast-iron guarantee that after the implementation period, sovereignty will mean sovereignty, and we will not enter into any deal which gives any other nation of the EU continued rights of access, a quota other than those negotiated as part of the annual coastal states negotiations. UKIP's fisheries spokesman Mike Hookham called on Britain's fishing fleet to march on Downing Street in protest after the utter betrayal from the government. Speaking from Brussels, the British MEP said, "For fishermen, there will be no Brexit, and the Tories have handed the EU even more power over their industry." He added, "Rather than regaining the fishing industry, as is our right under international law, Mrs May, Mr Davis and their we cohorts have actually weakened our ability to make policy in UK waters. When the EU say they will allow consultation of fishing rules, we all know that means the UK will totally be ignored. It's bad enough at the moment while we are still part of the EU. The simple fact is, the Tories betrayed the fishing industry on the way into the EU and totally shafted the same sector on the way out. While I have no doubt that those earning millions in the city each year will be celebrating this deal, many struggling fishers will know that this deal could mean the end of the line for them and their communities. I am now calling on fishermen across Great Britain to unite en masse and march on Downing Street to protest this betrayal." Campaign group Fishing for Leave shared a similar sentiment, having already warned the government the country's fishing industry could be consigned to the museum if their fleet's interests are not protected. Spokesman Alan Hastings said Mr Davis's announcement is a total sellout and just not for us. He added, "What part of being a vassal state satellite orbiting to the EU is a victory? What David Davis has capitulated to is an abject, disgusting betrayal. Fishing has no need to be in a transition, and now what is left of the British fleet is staring down the barrel of a gun. He should stay in Brussels, as his allegiance is obviously to the EU ring of stars and not Her Majesty the Queen of the British people. It is time for him and Mrs May to resign. All the government had to do was say no, given their acknowledgement of the obvious that we will be an independent state as our membership terminates. We can't be anything but. And all the government has done is spun this as a smokescreen. What they have gone and done is capitulate to everything the EU demanded, with some caveats to allow the ridiculous situation where we will be an independent coastal state but will have surrounded to obeying the CFP as some sort of vassal state. Satellite. The government can spin all it wants, but what we have is a situation where the EU tells us what to agree internationally, and then we return home to hand it all to EU control, where We are maybe consulted and get to sit in a room to be grateful for what we're about to receive. This is a death sentence if MPs don't reject it, as the EU can implement detrimental policy during the 2-year transition to cull the UK fleet and then to claim the fish we can no longer catch under UNCLOS Article 62.2. The government knows this fine and well, but has chosen to spit in the face of the biggest vote and mandate in British history to appease the EU, and they can knowingly set a path which will see another British industry consigned to museum and memory. It's disgusting. Monday, March 19, 2018, British Brexit Minister David Davis, L, and EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier meet at the European Commission in Brussels. Ruth Davidson, the leader of the Scottish Tories, said she wouldn't support a deal that does not deliver full control of fish stocks and vessel access, having branded the agreement a significant step. Mr. Davis also revealed the UK will be ready to step out and ratify trade deals which are set to come in after the Brexit transition period. Mr. Davis said the transition period offers Britain with a platform to build its future relationship. He added, the United Kingdom will be able to step out, sign and ratify new trade deals with old friends and new allies around the globe. For the first time in more than 40 years, these will come into force when the implementation period is over, providing new opportunities for businesses across the United Kingdom and seizing one of Brexit's greatest opportunities. During this period, we've agreed those international agreements which arise from our European Union membership continue to apply as now. This provides further certainty of businesses who can be confident there will be no disruptions to the existing trade relationship as we leave the European Union.